Hi guys, it's Lynn here. I hope you're having an amazing day. Now today guys, I've got a little bit of an oddity of a plant to talk to you about, and also a little bit about how to care for this weird and definitely wacky plant. Now this is Euphorbia platyclada, and it's a succulent plant, obviously. It grows normally in its natural habitats from Madagascar in Africa. And it is nicknamed the dead plant, or the dead stick plant, or the dead wood plant, for obvious reasons. It's a plant that always looks dead, but it is actually a living plant. And this is definitely such a weird oddity. It's one of our favourites in the collection. And although it's not the most beautiful of succulent plants, I think because it is such an oddity in itself, it makes it wonderful to grow, and it's highly collectible. Now we have a couple of these in our collection. This is one I've had for a long time, gifted to me as some cuttings about 4 or 5 years ago now from our wonderful friend Chris Coyle, who lives here in Ireland, in Limerick. So hi Chris, if you're watching this. This is now your cutting that you gave me some years ago. It is into a big plant now, very, very happy and healthy. And we also have a couple of cuttings as well that our wonderful friend Nellie from Collection of Unseen Nature also gifted to us, and they're also doing very well too. So it's a lovely, lovely plant, and it is very, very easy to grow. And in this little video, I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about it and also how to grow for it. Now, it's not an easy plant to find, and it's probably one that'd be almost impossible to find in a garden centre. So if you really do love this type of plant, you're probably best looking online and searching for places where you can buy it over the internet, because it's just not one you'd see down your local florist or garden shop. And this, as I say, naturally grows in its natural habitat in Madagascar in Africa, and it grows all along, so almost forming like a field of this amazing plant growing along the forests, almost camouflaged in its natural environment as well, which is why it looks like this sort of wacky appearance. And it's actually sort of threatened in its natural habitat now because it's a highly collectible plant, and a lot of collectors are sort of collecting it from its natural habitats, which is a shame. But as you can see, it is certainly unusual. Now, when it comes to the care of these plants, first of all, you said there's 2 different types of this plant. One is the Euphorbia platyclada, and one is the other one, Euphorbia platyclada variety Hardy. And they're slightly different. The Hardy one has wider stem and body segments. They don't have leaves. These here, the stems are wider on them, but haven't got that variety. This is the more commonly seen one, which is the Euphorbia platyclada, and this is the one you're more likely to see available for sale, if you can get it for sale at all. Now, obviously it's part of the Euphorbia family, which means that they have a milky sap. So if you was to cut this plant or trim it and take cuttings, it gives off a very milky sap. And also the flowers, or the cyathias as they call them, are very, 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 very tiny on these plants. And this has been in flower many times, and I've often tried to film it and take photographs, but they are so miniature that you just cannot get the macro on it. But the flowers are sort of like a very sort of yellowy, goldeny brown, sometimes even orange colour, very, 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 very tiny, and really nothing to scream happiness about. They're really tiny, and they're very, very easy to miss if you can't see them. So it's something you do have to keep an eye out. But this has flowered many times. The appearance of this plant, as well, as you can see, just looks pretty dead. And at the moment, it's more of a pale, sort of very pale peachy pink with a little bit of green, almost grey-like appearance to it. And it has a darker variegated dark grey-green variegation running through the pinkness of this plant. But in the summer, when it's receiving plenty of sunshine, it goes a lovely deep pink, like a salmony, almost orangey coal colour. Lovely, lovely colour. And obviously in less light, it does go more greeny grey. Now this plant has to have full sunshine, it can grow in more of a shadier position, but it loses its colouring and it may not flower. Ideally, they do love to have full sunshine, although they grow in on the floor of the forests naturally in Madagascar, and so they can take more shade than perhaps other type of Euphorbia succulents can. They do still prefer to have sun. This brings out the full coloration. And remember, there's a bit of a difference between the sun in Madagascar, even in a forest, than there would be in the sun in probably most northern hemispheres. So obviously succulent plants need as much sunshine as possible, and particularly this plant as well. So this goes the most incredible colour when grown in full sun, and it needs that also to promote the little tiny flowers. Now this plant is actually self-fertile, which means it forms tiny miniature little flowers that do get pollinated themselves, and they form tiny little seeds. And a few times I've tried to collect the seeds, but they're absolutely so tiny. They're like tiny bits of pepper. And I did try the one time I had a little bit of a seed and I put it in here, and it has actually germinated, as you can see down there. This was in the summer and I actually forgot about it. I had it my finger, pushed it in there, and that's coming through. So it is actually a tiny little seedling that has germinated there. Do you see? If you can see, it is so tiny. I'll just get that there. If you can actually see that little tiny bit of green just there coming through at the bottom. So that's good to see. And but obviously growing from seed would be a long and lengthy process. It's much easier to take cuttings of this plant. Now, when it comes to taking cuttings, pretty much the same as all Euphorbias. You cut a healthy part. I'll just show you one that I have actually done about a few weeks ago now. And what I would recommend is taking cuttings always during the spring and or very early summer, because it's not good to take them at winter. The reason why I had to take a cutting of this was because it was hanging over the pot and it really was difficult in the windowsill, so I had to cut it. And I've just left it dry. I won't be even putting this now into soil until the springtime. As I say, it's going to stay like that pretty much without any problems. But as I say, when it comes to taking a cutting, spring is always the best time. And because Euphorbias give off a milky sap, it's really important that you protect your hands and your eyes, because the milky sap can be very irritating. It can give you itchy skin, and also they say that it can even make you go temporary blind if you get the milky sap into your eyes. You need to be very careful. What I normally do if I'm taking cuttings of Euphorbias is I have a bit of water, a little bowl of water, cut it, and I just dab it straight in the water, and this sort of stops the bleed, the little white milky sap, that stops the bleed. And then I let it callus over for at least a week before I would put it into a well-drained, sandy cactus and succulent mix. So very easy to take from cuttings, so there you go there. And when it comes to potting up these plants, now these plants prefer to be more root bound and definitely smaller pots. These plants have very small root systems, unlike some other type of succulent plants. So obviously when it comes to potting, the smaller the pot, the better, as long as it's not too cramped. As you can see, that's quite a small pot for the size of the plant, but if I was to get that out, the roots probably only come to about there. So I say that, like all types of succulent plants, they can be very rot prone if they're overwatered. They like to be kept almost totally dry during the winter. I won't be watering this at all now, probably until March. Now we keep this in our windowsill in the kitchen where it gets plenty of winter sunshine. And I'd only give this water if the stems were really shrivelling up and it was looking signs of being stressed. But as you can see, it's pretty plump enough, so no need to worry there. And obviously, when it comes to the soil, you need to use a well-drained potting mix, always essential for cacti and succulents. And I like to make up my own potting soil here of a loam-based soil. I use John Innes No. 2, but you can use any type of loam-based, or whatever soil you prefer to use, as long as it is well-draining. I add extra perlite, and I also use extra horticultural sand to give extra drainage. And as long as you make sure that the soil that you're potting these up in dries out very quickly, runs straight through the pot. These plants do not like to be kept wet for long, and even during the summer months they can take plenty of watering. Make sure the soil is totally dry before you water them again. Rainwater is always more preferable if you can get it that, but as I say, always make sure that you completely let the soil dry out before watering again, from spring and right through to summer. And these, like a lot of euphorbias, tend to have a bit of a summer rest. And sort of mid to late summer, I go a little bit easier on the watering. And then early autumn, fall, they sort of come back into growth again. That seems to be in general with a lot of euphorbias. But as I say, from the winter, they do need to be kept totally dry and only water if they literally show signs of completely shriveling. But I would say, if in doubt, do not. I've never lost a succulent or cactus from being underwatered, but I've lost many over my life from being overwatered. So just bear that in mind if you're a bit unsure about the watering. Now, when it comes to the temperature, these plants, obviously they're from Africa, so they can take a lot of heat and a lot of sunshine. But so, obviously not a problem there, but as long as fresh air is given, if you're growing these plants in a greenhouse or a conservatory or polytunnel or indoors and it's sitting by a window, make sure plenty of ventilation of fresh air, because they can cook anything over 100 degrees. So fresh air is always important. And they can go out in the garden during the summer as well, so they get plenty of fresh air there. Now, winter temperatures. Euphorbias are a bit different to a lot of other type of succulent plants. They don't like to be kept too cold. So I would personally recommend a minimum winter temperature of 10 Celsius, which is 50 degrees Fahrenheit. And I keep all of my euphorbias inside the house, except for one or two in the polytunnel that can take about 2°C. But I do prefer to keep them warm. They're not... unlike other succulents such as echeverias and things like that, or kalanchoes that can take much more cooler temperatures, these do like to be kept warm. This particular plant, the platyclada, can take cooler temperatures than a lot of the other type of euphorbias. In fact, a minimum of 2°C for very brief periods would not kill this plant, and it definitely has to be kept above frost. But ideally, long term, I would say a minimum of, absolute bare minimum of 5 Celsius, which is about 41 degrees Fahrenheit. But from a long term point of view, do not during the winter. I would not let this drop below 10 Celsius, 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Better to be safe than sorry, as they say. So just trying to think if I've covered everything there with the care. As I say, keep in a well sunny position all times during the winter and the summer. You can water it pretty amply during the summer months, spring and summer months, as long as you let the soil dry out completely in between waterings. Keep in a well-drained potting soil, so the soil dries out quick. And also minimum temperature of about 10°C. 50 degrees Fahrenheit during the winter. And if you're growing these in hot temperatures in the summer, give plenty of fresh air and ventilation. And obviously cuttings, easy enough. Make sure you dab the milky sap into water, let it dry for a week to form a callus, and then pot up in a well-drained soil mix. Cuttings done from spring to summer. Repotting again is always best done in the spring and the summer months, or early fall as well, rather than in the middle of winter. I would not recommend that. And when it comes to fertilising, like all succulent plants, they do love to be fertilised. It's a myth thing, just leave them and not do nothing with them. So any type of good quality houseplant fertiliser will do. I personally like to use Maxi Crop organic houseplant feed, and I'll put links down below to that actual one I like to use. And the reason why I like to use it, A, it's good quality, and B, it's also, they don't use any animal ingredients, which I always prefer to do because I'm vegan, and I know it's not always possible to be 100% vegan when it comes to gardening, because obviously animal ingredients are used in fertilizers, foods and things like that. But I always try to do the absolute best I can, and it's a very good quality feed, so it's always nice to know no animals been harmed in that as well. So do check that out if you're interested, guys, and you want to know what to use to fertilize your plants. Also, if you want to know how to grow cacti and succulents and you're new to the hobby, or you just want to have a nosy, do go over and check out my website, desertplantsofavalon.com. And I share lots of growing tips on there. If you go into the section growing tips, hover your mouse over it, it will come up with lots of different sections on growing cacti and succulents there. So, and also I've got big plans to do an ebook on how to care for cacti and succulents in the new year. So stay tuned for that, guys. So guys, thanks so much for watching. And I want to send you loads of love, heaps of happiness, and tons of plant power. As always, from across the Emerald Isle. And until the next video, bye. Bye. And if you can get yourself this oddity, I definitely add this to your collection.